Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Did you know that almost 800,000 patients in the U.S. every year die or have some kind of permanent disability just because of misdiagnosis?
Wow.
I mean, that's a huge number, right? And it really makes you think about how artificial intelligence could change things in medicine.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a while now, the really powerful AI systems for tough medical cases have been closed source or proprietary, like a black box.
Right.
But there's also open source AI, where the code is out in the open for everyone to use, study, even change it.
Interesting.
So the big question is, can open source AI actually be as good as the big proprietary systems for figuring out really hard medical cases?
I think that's a question a lot of people are asking, and a new study actually looked into this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, some researchers got funding from the National Institutes of Health.
Okay.
They were from Harvard Medical School, and they teamed up with doctors from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and Brigham and Women's Hospital.
So a pretty serious team.
Yeah, and they published their work on March 14th this year in JAMA Health Forum. They focused on an open-source AI tool called Llama 3.1405b.
Llama.
Yeah. It has 405 billion parameters.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot.
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, so parameters are like the connections in the model that let it understand and make complicated text.
So the more parameters, the smarter it is.
Sort of.
Okay.
The main thing they found, which is really cool, is that this open source model was as good as GPT-4.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's one of the leading proprietary models when it comes to solving those really hard medical cases.
Interesting. So this study seems like a pretty big deal. Can we break it down a little?
Yeah.
What were the researchers really hoping to figure out?
Sure. So their goal was to compare how well the open source Llama 3.1 model could diagnose patients compared to the closed source GPT-4 model, especially with difficult medical cases.
So basically, could an AI that anyone can see the code for be as good as one of the top secret AI systems?
Yeah, exactly.
How did they go about comparing these AI systems?
They looked at 92 really tough medical cases that have been written about in the New England Journal of Medicine.
Okay.
This journal has a section where they talk about cases that are really hard to diagnose.
Interesting.
70 of these cases they used had actually been used in another study about GPT-4.
I see. So they wanted to see if Llama could do as well in the same cases.
Yeah, but they also wanted to make sure Llama wasn't just remembering answers.
Oh, that's smart.
So they included 22 brand new cases that were published after December 2023.
Got it. So after Llama was done learning new things.
Exactly. And while they were testing, neither AI was allowed to use the internet.
No cheating.
Right. They had to rely only on what they already knew.
Okay. And then how did they actually decide which AI was better at diagnosing?
Well, they had doctors look at the suggestions from each AI and rate them.
How did that work?
They had a 5-point scale. So a 5 meant the AI found the right diagnosis.
Wow. Impressive.
Right. A 4 meant it was close to the correct diagnosis. 3 meant it was related to the diagnosis and maybe helpful.
I see.
2 was for suggestions that were related, but probably not right.
And 0.
0 meant the AI had no good suggestions.
So basically a failing grade.
Pretty much. Now, sometimes the doctors disagreed on the scores.
Well, yeah, I could see how that could happen.
So they talked about the case until they all agreed.
So what were the results? Was Llama actually as good as GPT-4?
For those first 70 cases, Llama had the correct diagnosis in its list of possibilities, 70% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
GPT-4 only had it 64% of the time.
Oh, wow.
And when they looked at the AI's top suggestion, Llama was right 41% of the time. GPT-4 was right 37% of the time.
Interesting. So Llama was a bit better, but not by a huge amount.
Yeah. The researchers said the difference wasn't statistically significant, which means it could have been just random luck.
Oh, okay. But still promising for Llama.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at the 22 newer cases.
The ones Llama hadn't seen before.
Exactly. For those, Llama had the right diagnosis in its list 73% of the time, and it got the top suggestion right 45% of the time.
So even better than before.
Yeah, it seems like Llama's really good at figuring out new cases.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what does it mean for healthcare if an open source AI can do this well?
Well, it's kind of a big deal. Arjun Manrai, the lead researcher on the study, said this seems to be the first time an open source AI has been this good at diagnosing compared to GPT-4, at least as judged by doctors.
So open source AI is catching up.
Yeah, he talked about how this could be good for patients, doctors, and hospitals.
How so?
Well, having more options for AI tools could lead to more innovation and maybe even make them cheaper and easier to get.
That makes sense.
And they talked about some specific advantages of using open source AI in healthcare.
Like what?
Well, one big one is data privacy and security.
Yeah, that's always a concern with medical information.
Right. With open source AI, you can actually download the model and run it on the hospital's own computers.
So the data never leaves the hospital.
Exactly. It's different with closed source AI, where the data usually has to be sent to servers outside the hospital.
I see.
Thomas Buckley, the first author of the study, said this is probably a big selling point for people in charge of keeping patient information safe.
Makes sense. What other benefits are there?
Well, open source AI is also really flexible.
Oh, how so?
Doctors and IT people can actually change the model to fit their specific needs.
So they can customize it for their hospital or their patients.
Exactly. Buckley talked about how being able to use the hospital's own data to fine-tune the model is a huge advantage.
Interesting. So you're saying open source AI gives hospitals more control over the technology?
Absolutely. But closed source systems still have some advantages too.
Oh, yeah. What are those?
Well, they often come with really good customer support from companies like OpenAI and Google.
So if something goes wrong, you can call someone for help.
Right. And right now, it's usually easier to integrate those proprietary models with electronic health records and other hospital systems.
Nice.
Those big companies have teams of people working on making those connections.
So it sounds like there are trade-offs.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, like with any study, there are some limitations to this research, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. One thing is that we don't actually know exactly what data was used to train Llama and GPT-4.
So we don't know for sure if Llama was just really good at memorizing the training data.
Right, although they did try to avoid that by using those new cases.
Right.
Another limitation is that this study only looked at one specific task, diagnosing cases from written descriptions.
So it might not be exactly the same as real-life diagnosis.
Yeah, in the real world, doctors have to consider lots of different information.
Like talking to the patient and looking at their medical history.
Exactly.
So more research is needed to see how well these AI models would work in a real clinic.
Yeah, for sure. And they also said the study was kind of small, so they couldn't be totally sure if the differences between Llama and GPT-4 were really meaningful or just random chance.
Okay, well, I think it's great that they're being upfront about those limitations.
Absolutely.
So apart from the results themselves, what did the researchers have to say about what this means for AI in medicine going forward?
Man Rai believes that AI could be a huge help to doctors if it's used the right way.
I can see that.
He thinks AI could make diagnoses more accurate and faster.
That would be incredible.
But he also said doctors need to be involved in developing and using these AI tools.
Makes sense. You don't want AI making decisions without a human in the loop.
Right. And Adam Rodman, one of the other researchers who's also a doctor, mentioned that a lot of attention has been on closed source AI.
All right.
But this study shows that open source AI can be just as powerful.
Interesting.
And that could give doctors and hospitals more control over how they use AI.
It does seem like we're at a turning point for open source AI in medicine.
Yeah, it's moving really fast.
So what's the big takeaway for our listeners today?
Well, the main thing is that open source AI is getting really good at medical diagnosis.
So it's not just a toy anymore.
Right. This study shows that it can be as good as the top proprietary systems.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and it opens up lots of possibilities for better data privacy, customization, and more competition in the field.
So what should healthcare systems be thinking about as they start to consider using these new AI tools, both open source and closed source?
That's a great question.
I mean, they need to figure out how to protect patient data, right?
Yeah, definitely. And how to customize the AI to fit their needs.
And make sure it works with their existing systems.
Right. And of course, they want to make sure it's actually going to help them make better diagnoses.
So it's a complex issue with a lot to consider.
For sure. And it's changing all the time.
I think anyone who's interested in this topic should check out the article in the Llama Health Forum.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a read.
Thanks so much for breaking down this research with us today.
It was my pleasure.
This has been a fascinating look at the future of AI in medicine.
It really has.
Until next time, stay curious.
And keep learning.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.